Hello, everyone. Settlers Lament here again with Charlemagne and Sargon of Akkad. And we'll be discussing again the same sort of stuff we've been discussing these past couple of times. More stuff to do with more stuff to do with Mencius Moldbug and Enerex and some other topics. Thank you very much, Sargon, for joining us today.
Oh, no problem.
This isn't really on topic for the Moldbug stuff, but the most recent thing that I've been thinking about in relation to you quite a bit is the state of the skeptic community, because I know both me and Charlemagne were sort of pulled into this YouTube politics stuff by the anti-SJW stuff initially. And I enjoyed that stuff a lot back in the day. I used to follow you and Kraut and all those types of people. But it seems quite notable now that it seems like a bunch of your old friends are communists.
Yeah, it does seem that way, doesn't it? It's interesting. Like, I don't think there is a community anymore. I think everyone's gone their own separate ways, and those people that had any talent have made something of themselves or not, as the case may be. It does seem that that there are some people on the left who, in the former skeptic community, who are just ideologically committed, or not even ideologically, just sort of emotionally committed to considering themselves left-wing. Whereas for me, it's like being white. For me, it's a description. It's not an ideology. It's not a position. It's not something I imbue with inherent meaning. But they seem to think that left-wing equals good, even when left-wing is currently being pretty damn awful. And I would much rather hang out with the sort of like boomer MAGA conservatives any day of the week, because I think that fundamentally their principles are much better. The left is definitely operating by a different set of principles at the moment, and it's a bad set.
Yeah, I mean, Kraut in particular, I mean, it's less of a surprise for Shu. She always she always was a bit open about being at least a social democrat. But I mean, I guess Kraut wasn't entirely far off that either. But he, I mean, I don't know if he's lying or if he's just like this deceived. But I saw him recently say on Twitter that intersectional activists don't have any power. I mean, I know, like, I know he knows that they run like that there's hate speech laws in every Western country. I know he knows that every mainstream party everywhere needs to play into left-wing identity politics.
Yeah. And in my country, they're getting actively brainwashed as well. Like they actively have the Conservative Party had to endure diversity training, basically, critical race theory.
Yeah, it's like that almost everywhere in the West.
Yeah, the idea that these people don't have power is just bizarre. I mean, how do I make that happen, Crow? If you ever hear this, how do I get to present my, anti-SJW classical liberal views to the Conservative Party? How do I make that happen? Like, tell me. I want to know how they've done it.
Under a conservative government.
Yeah, under a conservative government. Unreal. It's like I feel like I'm being gaslit.
Yeah, well, this is something we've experienced as well from the neo-reactionary side. People calling, our version of this, the cathedral, like a conspiracy theory or whatever, even though it's plain as day.
Yeah, it's very obvious. Like the best, just off the top of my head, the best example was when they changed the definition on Merriam-Webster in real time to suit something that Joe Biden had said. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was no, it wasn't Joe Biden, was it? It was what was the offensive term that was made offensive? I can't.
Sexual preference, I think.
That's right. That's right. It was Coney Barrett or whatever her name is. Amy Coney Barrett. Yeah, that was right. And you just watching it happening in real time, and it's like, right, there is something evil at work here. This is memory holding stuff. This is genuinely Orwellian.
Yeah, one of the interesting things about what's been happening this whole year is, we've been wondering about, whether or not we're closer to the beginning or the end of this weird cycle that's happening right now. And I've been talking to AA a lot about this, and we're trying to really figure out, how in control are the elites at this point about what's going on. Are they tripping up, or do they have reason to be as confident as they are? Because it kind of seems like, especially with all of this great reset coming out very much into the open, and what they're doing with the coronavirus. I mean, it kind of seems like they're going all in at this point. And we know about the whole Agenda 21 2030 plan, the deadline, right? And it kind of seems like they're making their play right now. And I don't know if we should be more concerned about that, in that, you know, we're not prepared for this, or if it's actually good that they're trying it now because they see their grip slipping. And I'm not really sure what the case is at the moment. I think it might be elucidated after the US election.
Honestly, I'm just thinking, what is there that we could do to stop it anyway?
Yeah,
it feels like these forces are just so titanic and monumental that we can't. I feel like we can't hold back the tidal wave. We've just got to figure out what we do after it's crashed. And I think that we should be planning for what comes after whatever it is they do to us.
Yeah, my mind is in the same place. You know, I'm thinking about, in 5 to 10 years, I'm going to need to figure out, you know, where I could possibly go within the US or even outside of it, where I would be safe in the worst case scenario, which I don't even think is.
I don't mean quite like that, right? I don't think that it's going to be a collapse into dystopia. I think it's going to be a lot slower than that. And it is not something we can't recover from as cultures. We just have to have the will to do it. This is why I think Academic Agent's doing so well with his project. I think that there is a will for people to want to rebuild. And that means building our own institutions that are immune to conquest second law, that are explicitly anti-leftist, explicitly designed to be opposing their worldview, and so it's grounded on the opposite principle than they espouse. So they just can't get a foothold on the first floor. You know, no, we disagree with you at the very door. You're not allowed in, sort of thing. And that's one of the reasons I'm setting up a website. You know, so we can start building an alternative. You know, and I'm sure there are going to be payment processes and things like this. Eventually, they will, I think, bifurcate from the people who openly disagree with them entirely. And I mean, I don't think it'll be for their benefit, but we have to have an alternative that is built up. And building things up takes a lot of time. I mean, PayPal deplatformed, I think it's called Epic or Eptic or something, the website hoster for BitChute, Gab, and like the dissident right stuff. But the stuff that, we're not talking Nazis here, you know, we're not talking like Andrew Anglin, Daily Stormer, you know, we're talking like some just really hardcore Republicans and, you know, outspoken conservatives. So it's just,
yeah. I mean, I wouldn't even consider some of these people that hardcore. They're like pretty basic.
Well, yeah,
Republicans or libertarians in a lot of cases.
When I say hardcore, I mean like committed to their position, and so in vehement opposition to leftism. Whereas, like, a lot of them seem to think that you can coexist with the leftist acting like this. I don't think the left is going to allow you to coexist. I think they're going to drive you from everything. Every day there is a new deplatforming. Every day, it just doesn't like make the sort of news on the internet now. It's just, oh, that person's gone. And that thing's been taken away, and it's like, Christ, man, it's a scary time. I tell you, the sword of Damocles is falling a lot.
Yeah, totally. I mean, like, I'm Canadian, as I'm sure most people know, and the I'm not sure how long it will even be legal to be a conservative in a meaningful sense here. And I don't think that's an over exaggeration. Just about 2 years ago, Justin Trudeau introduced this new policy where any summer programs that want government grants need to explicitly endorse abortion and LGBT stuff. And they need to agree to help children to get abortions if they want.
As if the total opposite of Trump's critical race theory proposal, right?
Yeah. So,
like,
and this was like 2 years ago, and it's the left at like Harvard and all these big institutions have been talking about forever banning homeschooling, and that's already the case in many countries. Like, I mean, it's been illegal in Germany forever. It's been illegal in Germany since WW2. So it's like, it's not enough that they control all the mainstream institutions. Like I understand the progressive logic on this. They're probably going to say pretty soon, introducing conservative values to your children is child abuse, and you can't let people abuse their children. So conservatives can't have children. And I know, I mean, what I don't even know what the option that is. Moving to Africa or something, becoming celibate. Like I don't know if it's even going to be legal to be a conservative really soon.
Well, I mean, that's like there are going to be people who take that and say, "Oh, that's incredibly hyperbolic," but there is precedent for this, and you can see the creep that you're going towards. I mean, just the very notion in my country of you're not allowed to say certain things, and the very notion of hate crime laws, like it doesn't matter. It doesn't make the crime better or worse if it was done with racist intent or if it was done just out of some passion. You know, if I murder my neighbor because he's black, is it worse than if I murder him because he was sleeping with my wife? You know, like he's still murdered, and that's it's still the intent to kill. So why, but again, this is a particular mindset that's been enforced on the country. And you see it in everything, like Twitter, where you can't, if you misgender someone, you get banned. It's like, okay, but then you actually have made the conservative position verboten on Twitter because the conservatives do not believe in this gender bending stuff. So it's like, okay, it's not unreal. It's not unrealistic.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it is like particularly extreme. Just recently in Canada, within the past year or so, I believe, there was a case where there was an evangelical Christian couple that were trying to adopt a child, and the child was young. They the child wasn't sexually aware or anything yet. But the adoption agency in Canada refused them because they said they held bad views on LGBT stuff, and what if the kid ended up being LGBT? Then they'd be abusing their child. So if you can't adopt kids, I don't think it's that far of a stretch away from saying that it can't have your own kids if you hold these views.
No, not at all.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, like I think we've known this for a while, that the whole tolerance stuff from the left has always been a meme. It's they beg for tolerance when they're out of power. As soon as they get into power, they get rid of it. But it's really coming to a head now.
Yeah. You can feel the desperation in the air, because I just don't buy that Joe Biden is going to win. I think if it feels on Twitter when I'm arguing with these lefties and they're like, "Oh yeah, look, you coping because Biden's so far ahead in the polls. Ha ha ha, you're all so stupid." It just feels like the laughter of the damned, man. It feels like the last party on the Titanic. You know what I mean? Like
it feels like we're caught in a time loop. I mean, I watched the debates with Biden, and it's all the same stuff. It's the Russia conspiracy stuff.
Yeah.
They're accusing Trump of the same things, and they're still talking about tax returns, and it's like we're in this weird time loop. It's very surreal because with the polls this time, it's like guys,
there's an intensity to it, isn't there? But there's a bigger intensity, because before, I think that they genuinely didn't think it was going to happen. So there was a genuine sort of undercurrent of derisory mirth that was being transmitted. But now they're trying to project that same attitude, but it feels like we can see too much of the whites of their eyes and too much of the gum and the smile. It just feels like they're about to fucking snap.
Yeah, it does feel like
I have seen that the Biden campaign is trying not to make the same mistake that Clinton did, just expecting they would win. I just saw the other day a post on the Biden Facebook page where they posted polls showing that Biden was losing in swing states, and they were reminding their voters that it's still they think they're going to win, but it's still an open question. So I don't know. I'm not so sanguine about this. I hope Trump will win. I think he has a good chance.
I'm not saying that I think I know he's going to win. Right. I'm not saying he's definitely going to win. I don't know. I don't know like anyone else. But I'm feeling, as I'm watching them talk and watching them present themselves and watching them act, it feels like they don't think they're going to win. And so I think that they're scared. I think that they actually have a tenuous grip on things, on the narrative. And because like just looking at the fucking rallies and the difference in the popularity on the ground, man. If that were my campaign I was running and my opponent had that and I had like 100 people or something to turn out for Kamala, I'd be like, oh shit, I'm going to get crushed, aren't I? You know, so, you know.
Yeah, I think the fielding of Biden as their candidate is just an obvious act of desperation. I mean, this guy has no appeal whatsoever. He can barely string sentences together. You know, he's apparently disappearing now for the rest of the election. I mean, this is just not something that happens. It's not something a confident opponent does.
What candidate says, right, I'm not going to campaign for the next week or so until the election? What candidate does that? That's insane.
But what does this mean, though? Does this just mean that the Democratic Party is really effed up and they're slipping, or does this somehow, you know, can we apply this and say like the whole leftist system is in a state of crisis? That's what I wonder about.
Well, I think that the neoliberal corporate types have realized that the left is actually cancer, but it's too far gone. I think it's deeply embedded. You know, I don't think they know what to do about it.
Yeah, because I mean, it's pretty clear that they do not want these extreme communists or progressives like Kamala Harris or Bernie Sanders or whoever getting anywhere near the levers of power, because you have this conflict in the left way where you know they do want to secure their neoliberal corporatist state, and they're not willing to surrender to the leftists. But they've played this game that's now biting them, where the progressives really are on the verge of kind of taking over the left. So the neoliberals are thrashing at the moment, and you know what's probably going to happen is they're going to do a lot of damage. I mean, they already have done a lot of damage this year to our civilizations in this thrashing. I mean, you know, I know a lot of people in Wales at this point. Some of them are in the chat, and like what they're doing with the multiple tiers of lockdown in the UK just makes no sense at all, and it's just pure anarcho tyranny. I mean, you know, you have them just fencing off goods in the stores now for no reason whatsoever. They're literally right there in the store. You know, you can't go for a walk. I mean, this stuff just makes no sense at all. It's psychologically damaging, economically damaging.
They had to step in and say that sanitary towels are an essential item. It's like, yeah, okay, but you actually had them. You know, you define these things so they actually wouldn't be. You idiots! Like, why are you even having this fucking conversation? Like, if they can get to the supermarket, why not just let them buy whatever's in there?
But also fencing off half the supermarket, doesn't that just concentrate people even more? Just there's no rhyme or reason whatsoever.
No, it's insane. It just seems to be an open exercise in state power, and that's quite terrifying, really.
Well, it's kind of like they can't stop exercising power, right? Now that they've gotten a hold on these coronavirus lockdowns, they have to just keep enforcing arbitrary things. I think they know as soon as they let go of the lockdown levers, there's no way they're going to be able to put people back in the cage. And you can see them signaling this, right? They're talking about staying locked down till 2021, 2022. And it's like, you know, come on, man. I mean, people aren't going to buy this.
Yeah, no way. No, it'll be over by Christmas. It has to be. There is no way people are like that. I can't see my gran for Christmas. I can't see my family for Christmas. No way.
Well, and I think this is why Trump is probably going to win the election. I think the coronavirus has ended up helping Trump a lot more than it's hurting him, because what I see from the debates is basically one candidate is basically saying we're going to try and put things back to normal as soon as possible and you'll be able to have your jobs back. And Biden is saying, you know, okay, we're going to try to adjust to the new normal, and you know, we're going to do these bailouts and stuff, but people don't want that. They just want to go back to work, I think. And I think this is going to push the correct voters in the swing states towards Trump, because I cannot see people really accepting these lockdowns continuing like this. They're going to want to go back to work, and I think Americans are going to be willing.
It's not just that. We've got real evidence of this. Look at Cuomo targeting the Jews because of them flagrantly violating his lockdown rules. And what was their response? Jews for Trump. Jews for Trump. It's like, okay, like this is the response. Trump represents freedom now. Trump represents liberty now. Trump represents not being confined to your home. What a fucking PR disaster this is for the left.
Yeah, the one thing though is, so like you mentioned earlier, like, it's kind of like what we're dealing with, though. It doesn't really seem like it can be stopped by us. I mean, we can't really do anything at this point. Trump is probably going to win, and that's probably better. But and I think unless Trump uses that recent executive order he did to the maximal extent and basically fires most of the federal government, I'm not really sure that anything can really stop what has been set in motion at this point.
Even if it doesn't happen in America, it's going to happen in the rest of our countries. Boris is a globalist. He's a fucking globalist, and this "Build Back Better" slogan that's everywhere all of a sudden. I don't even think it's conspiracy. I wouldn't even put it down to conspiracy. I would put it down to a movement, like an ideological movement that believes in one world government, one world where all humanity's living in John Lennon's Imagine, and we get to sing happy, happy songs as we're told to ignore the explosions in the background. And it's like, right, okay.
Yeah, this is something I've been thinking about.
It doesn't need to be a conspiracy. It's just these are the institutions that everyone with power is trained into, and it's very rare for someone like Trump to come in that isn't totally enmeshed in this.
Yeah.
And I mean, even Trump isn't totally separate from it, and the bureaucracy that he has to deal with, the deep state, is, and that's how they always maintain their control. So it's, Boris went to all the same schools, attended all the same functions of these people. He pushed back against one small aspect of this stuff, but he isn't really trying to separate Britain from it totally.
No, totally not. He's just with Boris, it's just he wants a British coat of paint. He doesn't want a European flag painted on it. He'll have a British flag that's painted on globalism. Sorry, okay, fine.
Right, and it's similar with Trump. Nothing he's done at this point, and he has done good things, we should give him that, but nothing he's done is irreversible. In fact, most of what he's done is actually easily reversible by the neoliberals should they return to power, like pulling out of the Paris Accords or renegotiating the TPP or raising taxes again, whatever, right? Like, none of these things are in any way permanent.
Well, in the defense of Trump and Boris on this one, that is the purpose of our democracies. That nothing is going to be actually permanent, like the president or prime minister does. Yeah.
Right. Well, that's kind of the problem right now, right? Is that the system is kind of functioning as intended, but we're about to head off a cliff, and it's like you need to turn the bus really fast before you fall off the cliff, and it's literally not designed to. So you're like, now what?
I don't think we need to be. I don't want to. I hesitate to use the term alarmist, but. We're not going to get there's no permanent solution to anything, right? But what we can do is at least hand down a fairly good situation to the generations that come after us. And so I think it's more productive to worry about that rather than how can we forever fix this problem? Because I just don't think that's an option at the moment, or at all, to be honest.
No, I don't think there's a forever fix either, but I do want to limit the damage to whatever we're passing on as much as possible. Which, the agenda they're laying out in front of us is extremely worrying to me, because the thing seems so totalitarian and so powerful at this point. I don't want my entire country to just I don't want the US to fragment. I don't want the country to fall to these people for like a generation. I mean, and there's so many things stacked on top of this problem too, like what's happening with the economy right now. We have this economic crisis that's likely going to happen because of all the money printing, and it's just I really hate to say it, but it feels like the next generation is going to have a worse life than me, and that's really something I don't want. The only way I can see that happening is a sharp turn really quickly, and I think Trump actually could do it if he actually replaced a lot of these federal agencies in their entirety very quickly. He should have done it 4 years ago, I think. It might even be too late at this point for him to even do anything. I mean, in my view, the way you would actually get rid of the ideology is you actually need to remove the people from office for long enough to have your own people exclude them from the system in order for them to no longer be able to operate it, right? So like if Trump, and this he wouldn't do this, I think, because he wants to be liked, but if if Trump fired literally the entire State Department, literally the entire FBI, that's the kind of step you'd have to take in order to rip the Band-Aid off, basically, to keep these people out of power long enough to actually right the ship. But I don't think he's going to do that. And on top of that, it would be pretty damaging to the U.S. to make a move like that, right, in the short term. But that's the only way you're actually going to take the wheel of power from these people, is to actually just fully eject the ideology from the system.
I think that what you're doing there is not really solving the problem. I think you're just delaying the problem, and it's entirely possible that Marxism will spend its 2 decades in the wilderness, but figure out a new angle of attack and then come back for more, right? So what we need to do really is find a way to set a new normal that feels as if just the Marxist worldview is old hat and has failed. And it would be like going back to feudalism. No one's going to be on board with it, because that's ridiculous. That was part of a lesser and previous world, and so we've changed our paradigm. And so I genuinely think that we have to be looking at like post-Enlightenment. So it's like, right, what did humanity learn from the Enlightenment? What was good about it? What was bad about it? And we should take the good, discard the bad, and then replace what the bad was trying to fill with something that is actually useful and wholesome. I don't know, I'm not saying I've got the answer to this or anything like that, but I think that's the direction of thought in which we should be going. I really don't want to go backwards. I don't think there's any going backwards, and don't get me wrong, obviously defund these people, fire them, obviously, whatever. If I was running Trump's admin, I'd be ruthless about it. But that's just while I'm in power, right? It's not the sort of general zeitgeist change that I think needs to occur for these things to stop being dangerous, because I think they will always have a kind of seductive allure while we operate within the bounds of the Enlightenment, where the primary value is freedom rather than happiness. I've been thinking about this a lot, and I really think that we need to abandon that. I think that actually there are levels of freedom that come with deep amounts of unhappiness attached to them, and I think it's actually better to be happier than it is to be freer. And usually happiness and freedom, you would expect freedom to be a large component of happiness, and for me personally it is, and I'm sure for every other person. But there are definitely going to be points at which freedom creates less happiness, and I think we need to recognize that. And I think it's that recognition that puts us back on the track of being a bit more humanistic about like treating man as like a not just a lump of meat that is made of neurons, but kind of like a kind of a mythic creature, back into the sort of idea that people are kind of romantic creatures as well as just being scientifically verifiable. Does that all make sense?
Yeah, I like that a lot. I mean, a lot of times I see this romanticism directed in the wrong direction, and I see this a lot from like third positionists, the fasci types generally, where they sort of romanticize some idyllic version of the medieval or industrial past and sort of want to put man back into that state. But I think that's the wrong way to view that romanticism. I do think we're coming up in the 21st century on, I think, a shift in how we view the nation, or how we govern ourselves. That's as large as when the nation state itself was created, the Treaty of Westphalia. Like that's how we need to be approaching sovereignty in the 21st century. I think it really is going to be that big of a shift, and the question is who's gonna identify that and get there first. And I think right now we are thinking in the correct direction, and if we can actually figure out how humanity is going to govern itself in the 21st century and beyond, as compared to the old way before the neoliberals are able to do this, then we can actually lay that foundation. And I don't really know what that looks like yet. I read an interesting essay. I don't know if you read it, Settler's Lament, but Moldbug's recent essay where he talks about Zion or Bitcoin as a state, and he examines like the fundamental properties of sovereignty and what it actually means. And I feel like I need to reread the article to fully understand it technically, but I thought this was just an interesting way to think about sovereignty, is just to take these sovereign-esque concepts like Bitcoin and think about how something like it could form something that you would identify as a sovereign entity, which is completely different from a nation state. Because I think it's pretty clear that in the globalized world, this type of mode doesn't really work anymore, especially when the religious and cultural foundations that they depended on have all been eaten away by this scientific mode of government. And we can't let that dominate how we view human beings as just these like quantifiable entities. You're absolutely right about needing a mythical or metaphysical conception of what a human being is. And to me, that it really has to be a Christian foundation.
I take it that you guys are Christians
yes.
when you say that?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Because obviously someone else will say it has to be something else. So
Christianity is the only thing the West has had for the past 2,000 years.
Yes, but it also gave it up really easily, which makes me think, really gives me the big think there. It's like, what's the deal there? I don't know though. But the thing is, I don't think I honestly think that for Europe, Western Europe, religiosity is a no starter. I don't think that people are going to buy back into God, but it can be something like that. I think, I actually think that tradition is quite a powerful force in this regard, because it's all narrative, really. All of history is just a set of lies agreed upon, so effectively, I think, and we've got a fair amount of patriotism left, I would say. And, I think that there's some strength that we can lean on there. Trump's certainly doing a good job leaning on it, I would say. But I appreciate that, like, the religious types say, yeah, but won't everything we say essentially be Christian anyway? It's like, well, yeah, kind of, to be honest. But if that's the case, what's your objection?
Yeah, unfortunately, I suspect you're actually right there, and it's really difficult for me to envision how like a Christian revival in the West would actually work anytime in the near future. And it might simply be the case that we end up with some sort of perhaps Nietzschean mode of being. I mean, I know that's fairly popular, I find, among righties these days. The part that worries me about that is just how you actually anchor good and evil beyond simply like self-interest at that point. There are ways you can define self-interest where, it favors the group, like it's in your self-interest to act in ways that's beneficial.
I always hate those redefinitions because it feels a bit like a cope. It feels like, well, you just want to have your cake and eat it too.
Yeah, so, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's really my main worry with any sort of metaphysical path outside of Christianity, is it's really difficult for me to see how it could be anchored in some way that can be said to be fundamentally good. That's really the thing that drew me back to Christianity from the new atheist phase is, to me, I recognized that evil existed as a metaphysical force, and thus its opposite, good, also exists. And good to me is identified as the Christian God, right? And I think that's, if you can actually recognize that evil exists, not merely good and bad, as Nietzsche might put it, but the metaphysical force of evil that actually can then get you a long way along the path toward the Christian worldview. But I don't think everyone is going to be of that mindset, and honestly, that's okay. I think the key is not having literally evil people in charge like we do now.
So I think I've been thinking about this a lot again. I do spend an inordinate amount of time thinking about this kind of thing. I think that the Enlightenment has proven that values are actually subjective. And so this is a problem for religiosity, because your position is, of course, that God is an objective good, and if I don't believe in your God, then I don't believe in your objective good, so we can't have a proper conversation about it. So I think that there's actually quite an opportunity here for like a kind of Aristotelian revival, because it seems that Jordan Peterson, speaking about responsibility and duty, really sort of like furrowed, turned up a bunch of really fertile ground here, because obviously a lot of people were thinking, right, we need meaning and purpose, and we are not in a framework that believes in an objective morality. And so that's fine, because from an Aristotelian position, it's all individualistic. And so you can say that this is sort of your subjective experience. And I've been trying to sort of actually sort of adhere to Aristotle's view on virtue for the last, I'd say, about a year now. And I really feel like I've had really positive improvements in my life. I just by taking Aristotle seriously, I really feel like I'm doing good work. And I think that what's happened is that the new atheists threw out the sort of baby with the bathwater. Okay, fine. You want to get rid of the deification, the idea of an abstract God, etc., etc. But Aristotle had a huge influence on Christian thought, and it seems that a lot of that gets taken out with it, and so it gets replaced with, I think, communism, essentially. That seems to be the only logical Enlightenment conclusion, is absolute freedom from everything, so there will be no state, no structure, no hierarchy, no nothing. It's like, right, okay, that's really counterproductive, and I think that taking a sort of like pre-Enlightenment sort of, genuinely the sort of virtue ethics view is helpful for the individual. And I think there's power in that can be used to go forward. But you guys let me know what you think, because I'm probably full of shit.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree. I obviously don't agree that value is subjective, but I do agree that
you guys wouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, I can't be a Christian.
Yeah.
But I do agree that there needs to be a return to traditional philosophy for people to. For there to be any sort of restoration of this, whether it's through traditional religion or something else, and more importantly, there needs to be a return to traditional understandings of morality, especially virtue ethics, because there needs to be an abandonment of modern social liberalism. And I don't just mean like the particular policies that we understand as being associated with social liberalism. I mean what you're talking about, the idea of trying to free ourselves from from any type of constraint. That is true freedom. Without defeating that, there's no way to really get any of these things that we're talking about.
And just to point out one quick thing, like I would put Hunter Biden in the category of someone who has true freedom. Like this guy seems to have absolutely no limits whatsoever, and he seems to be constrained by nothing. He's got all the money in the world. He's got all the connections in the world. He's so many doors have opened to him because he is a Biden. All the degeneracies in the world, and the man just looks like a slave to his own passions to me. He looks like in the text message where he's saying, I can't have this girl here because I'll be wandering around naked, smoking crack and talking to cam whores or whatever. It's like, dude, then just don't. Like fucking, but a man who literally can't control himself, and so it's like that to me is not someone who's free. That to me is someone who is definitely a slave of something, and I think that we need to emphasize this kind of personal discipline-based alternative, because I just really think the people who follow this kind of worldview you just look at them and they seem better. It doesn't take much measurement to prove it. So, and I think there's strength in it. And I think it will actually help people as well. That's the thing. It's not just because I want to advance a particular agenda. I think this will actually help.
Yeah, I also agree with you here. In my case, I got into the Stoics about 2 years ago, probably, before Christianity again, and I found that really helped me. And I think that these ancient Greek philosophers are really the ones we need to be looking to initially help reorient us, because one thing I see on the right a lot is they're like, okay, well, the left has power. We need power. Where can we get power? We can get it from, this very ancient European paganism, or from Nietzsche or something like that. But I think that's the wrong way about it. What we actually have a shortage of is morality and discipline, more than anything. And you actually can find that in the Stoics or Aristotle, and that that's good enough, I think. for us to form some sort of successor to our current civilization that's actually sensible.
I think it's actually I think Aristotle in particular has actually a remarkably well-rounded view of a human being. So because what I'm thinking is, okay, how is autism going to be applied to this? How is Germanism going to be applied to this and taken to its most extreme form? But if you look at the way Aristotle's presenting the world, he says you've got to be an all-round guy. You've got to have friends, you've got to be involved in civic life, you've got to be, virtue, you've got to be a good person, you've got to cultivate yourself, and it's in all sort of manners. And so that seems to be a kind of perfect tonic to the atomized isolation and autism that people are getting from social media. That seems to be just the polar opposite, and it looks way more healthy, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it does. I think it better approaches the proper, I guess, mythical understanding of the self that you alluded to earlier. I see a lot on the right. People look at they'll say, okay, the left has power. Why do they have power? It's because they act as a collective. So we need to act as a collective first. But I think this is really what divides a lot of people on the right is how you actually approach this problem. And I think individual out is actually the better way to go about it. And a lot of these analyses lack this higher sense of what a human being is. Like that's one of the problems with like Moldbug's philosophy or analysis in of itself is it's purely mechanistic, and it lacks any spiritual dimension to it, which I think is why it's sort of remained on the fringe and hasn't really I think it really can't neo-reaction by itself can't form any holistic worldview, and that's why its solutions are kind of so bad, because it doesn't actually have a philosophical basis to provide them on. And Aristotle or the Stoics and Christianity, I think all three of those can actually provide a coherent enough basis to actually build something on.
The interesting, the good bit, sorry, not the interesting bit, the good bit about taking this sort of Aristotelian approach. I mean, the first thing is it's hard work, right? So it is, after doing it for like literally the last 10 months, it is hard work. But it gets easier because it becomes habit, and so it's just getting people into it. But the important part is not abstract, it's not theoretical. It's totally demonstrable. Like I look back on pictures of myself from just the beginning of this year, and I am horrified because I'm used to seeing the new me in the mirror, right? And I feel happier. I feel so much better about myself. Like cutting out sugar with my diet, I just feel so much better. And I don't know how to describe it to people. It's like, look, no, I just don't feel like life sucks, Like I feel like life is good and I'm enjoying it. I feel like I'm living, and if this is closer to eudaimonia than I was before, then I'm going to keep going, But the point is, there's a tangible result that other people can see. It's not something you have to be persuaded into, and if you get like groups of these people acting together, you'll see things being built. It won't be the perfect theoretical framework that now we can all do, that we've all been persuaded. And again, this is like the great idiocy of the Enlightenment. It's like, well, what are you going to do? Persuade everyone to do exactly the same thing before we can get moving? Oh no, revolution. That's the only alternative. If we can't all agree, then you've got to kill those other people. It's like, this was a bad idea. Just get to work. Just get to work,
Yeah, I mean, that's something I've noticed myself too. And, over the last few months, I've gone in the opposite direction where I can, the whole, I feel like I'm living the same day every day for the last like 9 months. And that's actually gotten to me. And I know that like my power levels have basically diminished because I've keeping myself appropriately disciplined. And it's really weird because you actually, I mean, it sounds silly, but you really do feel like your spiritual, physical, everything, your power levels go up when you actually act these like harsh disciplinary ways upon yourself. You actually just get stronger. And so it actually, when you live like that, from this self outward perspective, you actually end up developing a better self to act in the collective rather than starting from the collective and then working backwards. because that is ultimately just an abstract entity, right? Like this, and that's sort of the problem when you know, that's like the problem with the ethnats, right? Is like they have they have, I guess, this mostly atheistic idea of a collective, and you know, the problem is it's not, there's no glue there. There's no metaphysical glue really holding it together, which is why you need that religious aspect in your thinking, and it actually needs to be primary. The religious aspect, whatever that is, even if it's like a soft religion.
Let's not use the word religious, because again, like as soon as you say the word religious, the atheists just switch off. But the thing is, the atheists aren't necessarily people without sort of passion and without this. I don't want to say spiritual, so maybe like mythological or something like that. I don't know, how to describe it, but the immaterial aspect, the thing that makes the person more than the body of flesh that they are. But we've got to stop saying religious, because we're definitely going to be turning off atheists this way, because I'm an atheist myself, and as soon as you say that, I'm like, oh no, Catholics, stop. But that's not what we're talking about, really. But yeah, the thing with like you were saying, you realize it makes you better. Like the perfect example I'm using at the moment, and I can't stress this enough, is the bike ride to the office and back. We're really close to launch now. So for the past, like, I don't know, 3 weeks or something, we've been working in the office every day of the week, and it was tough to cycle there, like 20 minutes, half an hour bike ride there, and then back in the evening. My legs would be killing me. It was really quite, at first it was difficult to genuinely motivate myself. But the thing is, I deliberately got an office this far away so I would be forced to do that. And now I'm not even sweating by the time I get home. Like I am on fire by the time I get home, and then I'm ready to be a dad because my kid wants to play, And so, like, I go back a month, and I would never have thought I'd be as fit as I am now. And I again feel great. Just feel great. I'm so glad that I did it. And you can't. There's no better time to start than right this second. You just have to get on with it. Just do it. Just shut up and stop making excuses. Do it. Every other thing you say that's not this is a cope. Get to work.
Yeah, very well put. And I should say, I forget exactly where I heard this. It was just a few days ago, but someone was explaining the etymology of the word religion, and the way they described it. It actually means to reconnect from the original Latin, as far as I understand, which is interesting because people will say I'm spiritual but not religious or whatever. We actually have we have a weird understanding of what religion actually means or used to mean. It's basically like a mechanism through which you rebind your community back to itself, rather than what we think of as like the church or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, religion means to bind, I think, is, at least that's one of the parts of the etymology. So I think a sort of basic understanding of religion is it's something that you're bound to. We have a very utilitarian understanding of most of the things that we work with. Whenever the left is introducing their new policy, they have some sort of utilitarian argument for why it's so great. Yeah. But religion isn't something that you're there, in a broad sense, isn't something that you're there because of some specific benefit it's given you. It's something that you're bound to, and that you're not going to just throw away because you think there's some overall small detriment to it from it or something like that.
What I wonder is, is virtue ethics, is that enough to actually bind people back together? I get the feeling it probably is. It probably
I don't think so on its own, right? I think I think that it will be very good on an individual level for those people who realize there's something wrong with modern life, that there's something wrong with the way humans are living right now. And it's actually not normal to be in this position, and it's not making people happy. It's definitely not making people happy. We know this. And if happiness is the goal in life, and what else is the goal if not just be happy, then you need to start thinking about other ways of achieving that thing, despite the fact that you're in the situation you're in. But I was going to connect that to something, and now that's just slipped my mind. God damn it.
Well, I was going to say that I think it is enough to bind people together.
Oh, yeah, that's it.
But it has to be demonstrated.
Yeah,
in a communal way.
Well, yeah, so the bonding agent is the belief itself, right? Like the virtue ethics is kind of like a personal thing you do for yourself and you do for others. You know, you can Jordan Peterson it and say, be the rock that others can lean on and stuff like this. All good stuff, right? But like, why would they spend time with one another? Why is this not just the end of the line of the perfect ones, where they spend all their time grooming themselves and make themselves perfect, but never interacting with another human, right? So you need a kind of bonding agent that supersedes that, I think. That also builds into the, builds the virtue ethics into its own worldview and like cosmology, however you want to describe it. Scientism isn't working. Scientism failed to do this. Let's trust the science. Well, fucking science is currently saying that maybe we should eat human beings because we're going to die of carbon dioxide poisoning or whatever the fucking stupid fearmongering of the day is. Never look to a scientist for moral advice. Is my advice. And I say this because I worked with a bunch of scientists. I dated some scientists because I worked at the research councils for the UK. And I wasn't a scientist, obviously. I was just a tech engineer guy. But you realize that a lot of them aren't actually brilliantly well-adjusted emotionally and, have got backgrounds that I, as a normal, well-adjusted person who came from a two-child family, stable household, stable income, no particular dramas, middle class or lower middle class. Like you realize that a lot of these people come from worse or stranger situations than you do. They don't necessarily make good decisions with their life, and they're not happy. And I think it's because they're trying to live out this kind of enlightenment dream, to be honest. Sorry, I keep killing the conversation, don't I?
Oh no, I just think I'm just horrible at this. But no, yeah, I agree. We need something beyond scientism, beyond material understandings of these things.
I think for some people that will be religion, and that's fine, But for most people, I don't think it will be, and so I think the sort of at the moment, I think that traditionalism, or sort of like Team America, Team Britain, I think they're the best bets. There is a kind of strong Team Britain patriotism in this country, and I can see that it's strong in America with Trump's rallies. That is not like the white nationalist road, but is also something that can be used to make a claim to the validity and value of the culture that already exists, and so I think that's probably a good place to start. But I haven't perfected anything here or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, my long-term plan is if we can just stop mass immigration, the based Catholics will outbreed you.
Well, okay, well, that's not making a great argument against mass immigration. But you are right, though, about the mass immigration problem.
No, I'm joking.
No, I know.
Though it is notable that more people attend mass in the UK than attend Anglican churches.
Oh, Jesus! More people probably attend Zoroastrian fire ceremonies than attend Anglican. It's something like 6% attendance rate. It's really low.
Totally random, but mentioning the Anglican Church reminded me of Peter Hitchens, which reminded me of a random fact. So last night I was watching Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street, the original performance actually, and as it happens, Peter Hitchens lives on Fleet Street, and I don't know, that led my mind in interesting fictional directions. But yeah, so I was thinking about what you were saying there about improvements on yourself and everything, and I see a lot of things on the right-wing internet these days about like all of these base things we need to do in that. And I just came from watching AA stream with Edward Dutton, right? Or I should say Dutton stream with AA rather. And like I was just watching the comments, and I saw this typical thing where like people are bullying the e-girls in the comments about like not having white babies or whatever, right? And it's just like, I feel like if that's the kind of thing you're thinking about, you've probably never really dealt with real problems in life, right? It's just like, and I feel like, I don't want to like elevate the individual or something over the collective good necessarily, because both matter. But it's like, you're a dad, right? Like, you have real problems in life. I'm between you and Settler in age, and it's like, I'm sure to some degree, I saw Distributus there in chat. He's also got children now. It's like, I feel like people who are dealing with the real challenges of life tend to have a better grasp on what we're actually supposed to be doing in terms of figuring out how to lay the foundations for the next generation than, all this nonsense about like, oh, we just need to like have more white babies, or we just need to, enact this or that policy. And it's like, well, who's we? And I mean, why are you even thinking about this? Like, why are you thinking about, some random woman in Britain, whether or not, like, I don't know, Laura Towler or something has children? Like what are you doing? I mean, this sort of thinking, that shouldn't, that would just never occur to me at all, because I'm thinking about real problems that I have to deal with, and people around me have to deal with in life. And I'm not sitting here, pondering how I'm going to like bring about based civilization constantly, because that's not a real thing. And I see
it's not a real goal, is it?
No,
it's not a real goal.
It's a totally abstract goal, right? And it's not that it's not it's not that having a good civilization isn't a good goal, but the way you get there isn't to like make broad statements about what should be done to get there. It's just to actually take the individual steps, like you said earlier, that go in the direction of doing that towards your individual, in your individual circumstance. Like, I hate to channel Jordan Peterson here, but he's kind of right,
He is
like
right.
he is right. Clean your room, whatever.
Yeah.
That is actually where it starts. Now that's not a holistic philosophy, but that is actually the correct starting point for getting us from A to B. It's not to like sit here and pontificate about our grandiose reactionary worldview and like what Carlyle would do or something. I mean, these can be interesting intellectual exercises, funny, we can have a good time, but like ultimately when it comes to what we actually need to be doing, it's way more at the individual level than at the collective, because as we said at the beginning, like we're basically powerless to actually affect where things are going at this point. Like we in particular, maybe Trump can do something, right? But whatever happens in the election, the three of us and basically everyone listening, we're all going to do the same things anyway, right? Whether Trump or Biden wins, you're going to build out your media organization. Settler and I are going to keep doing what we're doing with our channels and networks. And, it doesn't actually it barely makes a lick of difference whether or not Trump or Biden wins in terms of what we're actually going to be doing in our lives.
It's long term and abstract. And at the end of the day, like, again, it just feels like a massive cope, doesn't it? It's like, well, listen, I could get to work, improve myself, lift some weights, earn some money, build something up. Or I could spend another 10 years debating this abstract concept that's never going to come to fruition. How about that? It's like, shut up, just get to work, And Distributist, what do you mean by I brought Bronze Age Sargon tonight?
Yeah, so that was pretty funny.
What does this mean? Because I might be totally for it.
I'm not even totally sure, but I think
I
it's
might
a
be in
compliment.
favor.
Yeah, I think he was talking about. I'm guessing he was talking about in terms of like your self-improvement stuff. But I actually,
Sure,
I mean, you know what that is referring to? Yeah, Bronze Age pervert.
No.
Okay. I actually haven't read Bronze Age Pervert myself, but what's the name? Bronze Age Mindset. It's like this I don't even know if it's satirical, but it's this book that has circulated among like the right wing, basically, that presents this sort of like super hardcore, hyper masculine, like grug brain type of being. I can't say much more than that because I haven't actually read it, but like from what I understand, the way it's written is like intentionally broken English, and it gets more and more like Grug wrote it as the book goes on.
Right.
I actually have a copy of it. I've been reading to read, but I've been reading other stuff lately. But it's a comical read that at the same time actually has like a good aesthetic worldview in it.
Our the Mentress Moldbug actually got one of Trump's former advisors to write a review on this book, Michael Anton.
Oh yeah. That was a good read.
Yeah. But yeah, I haven't read the book either. It's another thing on my reading list. But yeah, I mean, what you guys were saying before is definitely. I mean, this is always what I encourage my audience is virtue's an individual thing. It's something you do individually. You're not judged collectively. You're judged for what you do. But both in this world and in at the final judgment. So what I always tell my audience is like it doesn't like matter if you have the most based epic viewpoints. What matters is what you personally do. Improve yourself, go to the gym, get a wife, pray the rosary, go to mass, all that type of stuff.
I noticed you didn't include charity in that one, Mr. Christian.
Yeah, I mean that's good too, but I'd rather prayer than charity.
How's that different to this? I'd rather pay taxes than charity.
No, I mean, but both are good. I mean, if you're going to mass and you're not donating, I don't know what you're doing. But yes, you should donate to charity too. Or even better, just help people out.
Do
individually.
Yeah.
But yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, Jordan Peterson gets a lot of stuff from all different sides, from the right and the left, and there's some problems with his worldview. But I've met many people who have really improved their lives from listening to his stuff, so I can't really fault him, just because he's not perfect.
Yeah, I think he's a tremendously positive force on culture in general, even with his own personal imperfections. So.
Yeah, I feel like Trump is like the last bastion of human beings in politics as well. Like, he's like he's the last man. There's no one left who's not a lizard person except for him.
Well, okay, so that's really interesting because before we came on here, I was listening to his latest the rally he did today, and one of the things, I mean, like I've been watching all these rallies from the start, and as many of them as I can watch, because they're really good fun, and I want to see how he is as a person, right? And he started with really high energy, and you can see that he's still enjoying doing them, but he's doing like 2 a day now as it's leading up, and you can see he's getting tired. I think he could probably just keep it to 1 a day, and everyone would understand. But one of the things he said, and he said a couple of times, is things like it could only happen to me, right? And that is in this country at least, and I imagine it probably is in America, kind of a working class boomerism, right? So a working class sort of parent or grandparent, they I guess they have a bit more of a solipsistic view of the world, and they say things like, "Oh, this would only happen to so and so," when some crazy things happen, and it sounds really like a nothing. Who cares? But what that is actually sort of in their mind putting a unique pin in a part of reality and saying that's always this and it will never be anything else. And so and I've seen this happen, so this is going to sound morbid, but like if that person would die, this would be one of the things that they themselves remember about that person, and it gives them sort of spiritual comfort, like emotional comfort, and it's these putting the sort of pins in reality like that make it so you can't just switch that out for something else that's fixed now. And Trump saying that, I think he is in some way, either consciously or unconsciously, trying to put that into people's heads that it can only be him. He's not interchangeable, and this is essentially the mythological sort of man that you're talking about, the last man. And so when you say he's like the last man in politics, he kind of is. He's not the corporate the empty suit that can just be replaced in. Trump's genuinely something different, and hopefully he's not the last of his kind, but maybe he is.
Well, yeah, I mean, as depressing as politics can be currently, one little thought experiment I have to, just imagine how much worse it could be is if Mitt Romney won in 2012, and if he was what dominated Republican politics currently.
Yeah,
it could imagine? Be. Yeah, it could. could be much worse if got the guy marching at BLM marches was the best the right had to offer.
God, at least the Americans have got Trump. I can enjoy supporting Trump. I can do it with genuine conviction. I think Trump's a great option. Considering the options we've got, Trump's a brilliant one as far as I'm concerned. I love supporting Trump because it's a proper Bronze Age mindset. It's like, no, Grug good, Trump good. Like I don't have to think about it, and I've been like making a bit of an ironic meme about it on Twitter. Just no, tribalism good. Our team gonna win. Rasmussen truthful. Like all of the others false, and it doesn't matter. None of it fucking matters. But when you see the rallies, you know where the energy is. You know where the popularity is. So it's like, come on. It's all just theater now. I think we've got this.
Someone in chat said talk about Moldbug, which we haven't really done at all. But
yeah,
I mean, I don't know. We've had a good conversation, I think, and like I'm a little tired of shilling the clear pill, honestly. But I will say that
I know. Do you guys not understand what clickbait is?
I will say one thing. I feel like
you haven't got the word destroys in there once. Like what they're destroying Moldbug and more. That's what you should have had in there. It would have been horseshit. I've never read any Moldbug, but I just really like his idea of the cathedral. It's very true. But you're doing clickbait wrong. This is why David Pakman's trashing your numbers, man. Come on, guys. Pump those numbers.
Is he still around? I forgot.
Yeah, no, seriously, check out his channel. Look at the latest stream he did. It literally Trump holds urgent MAGA rally, and it's like, David, if Trump loses, what the fuck are you gonna do? It's the end of your channel. Like you got 13,000 people watching with Trump urgent MAGA. Like, this is you're not talking anything about yourselves. You need Trump.
Yeah, he really does. I can't believe he's still around. Yeah. I used to do like I think I published like 3 like criticism videos of his channel way back in the day because I used to watch him in like 2014, 2015 or something, back before he went completely insane, like a lot of progressives. And he was a really interesting case because you kind of got to watch him come down with Trump derangement syndrome like in real time, and it was really interesting to watch that happen.
But there's a part of me that thinks that Pakman's Trump derangement syndrome is actually simulated. Because I think he's actually one of the smarter progressive talking heads, and I think he realizes that Biden's going to lose. Trump's got the energy and the motive and the reason for doing what he's doing. Because what the fuck's Biden campaigning on, man? Like I just don't understand why people would be attracted to it in any other way other than just not Trump. But I think that Pakman realizes I don't want to call it a grift because he is genuinely left-wing. He is genuinely opposed to Trump, but I think that I've seen enough of his content to see him give the sort of unpopular opinion. This isn't as one-sided as it looks, so I don't think he's as disconnected. I think he's a bit confected with Pakman. Maybe I'm just being charitable though, maybe I'm being overly charitable. I could be completely wrong.
I don't know.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's I've never watched Pakman that much, so I can't really say. But with a lot of left wingers, I get this from the right a lot. That left wingers they can't really believe this stuff. They can't really be as hysterical as they seem. And I know. I mean, I've gone to college. I've been friends with a lot of these people. In a lot of cases when they didn't know that I was a conservative or whatever. And like they really seriously seem to believe this. So they're either really good at LARPing, or a lot of them really are just this hysterical. And I think it's probably the latter.
Yeah, I think they really believe it. And why would you not? All of the power structures are telling you that it's true. Why would you not believe it? You'd think that anyone outside of the orthodoxy was crazy if you were some college student.
Yeah.
But right, it's gone 10 o'clock now, and I'm afraid I have to be up for work tomorrow. So I'd better head off. But this has been entertaining as always, gentlemen. Sorry it takes so long for me to be able to come around and do these as well.
No worries. Thanks for joining us.
That's all right. And Distributist, I look forward to your takedown video. Sargon destroyed on natural rights or something. I don't know. No, it's always fun, man. But thanks so much for having me on, guys.
Yeah, it was good.
Take it easy, chaps.
Bye-bye.
Peace. Okay, so we only have a couple super chats, which I don't know what's up with that. I mean, I have 400 people watching. I don't know how I only got like 3 super chats. But
They spent all their money on Dutton.
Yeah, I guess. But we'll get. I'll just go through these super chats quickly, and we'll get out of here. Okay, where are they? Warden of the North for $5 American. I'm a little behind, but Charlemagne, I am also a Stoic, and I also believe that for someone in our position, it is definitely beneficial to live by respect. Yeah, I mean, as I said before, I think I think traditional philosophies and stuff can be very useful. Can be very useful, especially if you're not really into traditional religion yet. You know, the goal should, of course, be to become Catholic. But if you're not there yet, then traditional philosophies can be a very useful way to sort of introduce you to that sort of stuff. Or even if you never get into traditional religion, it can still be very useful for building that sort of framework in your life generally. So I'd definitely recommend checking out the type of stuff if you, and it doesn't even necessarily need to be Western philosophy. There's lots of, as cringe as the like white Buddhist is, there is still a lot of value in Eastern philosophies too. So I mean, again, I don't want to like go postmodernist on this or anything and say that like, oh, they're all the same, right? They're not. You should become Catholic. But if you're not there yet, it's good to check out these different types of things. Do you have anything you want to say about Stoicism? Since I know you're the one that mentioned that.
I mean, just read Seneca. Okay. Get the abridged version of Letters to a Stoic. I mean, that's something everyone should read. I think it's just a really good advice, honestly, in the book. And it's because I like Letters from a Stoic, not because it's philosophy per se, but that it's kind of just like a journal, basically. I mean, it's actually literally, letters Seneca wrote to, I think his nephew. I can't remember exactly, but it's not presented as like straightforward philosophy, right? So it has a sort of like element of like realism to it, more than you would get just from reading, a philosophical book. And I always like that element in I don't know, something about any time I read history or philosophy, whenever there's like an element of real humanity to it, I find it a lot more engaging.
Cool, yeah. So I did just get a couple more super chats now from my shilling, so I guess that was successful. But remember everyone, I got a subscribe star, Patreon, Teespring just saw I sold another shirt in the past couple of days. So any of those are great ways to donate to me, though I do keep more of a cut from subscribe star or Patreon. So, I mean, any way to donate is cool, but YouTube takes a quite large cut. But moving on with the super chats. Sorry, the listing's always confusing. 21st Violinist for $2. WoW-based stream is worth clipping for a COD daily. Cross our fingers on that, I guess. Thank you very much, 21st Violinist. Bob Odd for 20 USD. The point about rightists not having perspective is really important. People on 4chan think posting threads of people doing damage and spamming racial slurs is a worldview. Virtue matters more. Don't I don't care what you do on 4chan, but being edgy isn't like it's not anything beyond being edgy. It's not useful. Don't think you're don't think you're based in epic because you're like a racist on 4chan. Like you're not helping anyone. You're if anything I mean, I don't really care, but you're if anything counterproductive. Cole Burning. I don't know. I'm not going to pronounce anything right, guys. If you haven't gotten that yet. A question on virtue: how can we talk about human perfectibility and improvement without understanding of objective, valuable qualities for humans to have? I mean, I don't think that I don't think that a lot of these things really fully make sense without a really consistent philosophical and metaphysical framework. So I mean, I don't think reality makes sense without the existence of God. This is the classic. This is the classic argument for the existence of God, that existence must have must be predicated on something, and there must be a source for that existence, and that existence is God. So, when we're talking about religion, and when we're talking about traditional religions, we're not. These are very fundamental things, and if you don't have those fundamentals right, then it's going to cause a lot of problems in your thinking down the line. But that doesn't mean that there aren't still. But that doesn't mean that there aren't still that you can't still arrive at a lot of right conclusions, even if you have wrong fundamentals. It just will mess things up, in my opinion. So yeah, Sean Egan for $5. Good discussion. Thank you very much. Gurzy for $5. Do you guys think? What do you guys think about criticisms of Moldbug, that he's repackaging Frankfurt Marxist conceptions of ideology, society, etc.? I mean, yeah, he's repackaging a lot of stuff. He's pretty open about that. If you've ever read the open letter, you know that he cites tons of different stuff, and he cites lots of different stuff in his other works too. I mean, that's one of the things that's really nice about Moldbug, is you can get a very big reading list from reading his stuff, that he with all the stuff he cites. So I don't think there's anything wrong with I don't think there's anything wrong with pulling ideas from other people. Actually having a entirely original idea is very rare. Most of these people that Moldbug got his ideas with, they didn't invent it either. They got it from someone else, who got it from someone else, who got it from someone else. That's how the ideas work. They generally evolve. It's not something that someone just, they're thinking really hard and they invent something completely out of whole cloth. Moldbug does have some original ideas, or at least he puts old ideas in some original ways, but it is mostly just repackaging things. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Is there anything you want to say about that, Charlemagne?
I mean, yeah, there's a postmodern element to Moldbug, and then nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's fine. And I mean, everyone repackages ideas and takes ideas from other people. So, and it doesn't actually, an idea isn't evil because it came from Karl Marx, right? So,
I think there's a lot of interesting stuff from the far left, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But yeah, so Avaloch, again, I'm not going to pronounce anything right. This name's Brazilian though, so I hope that gives me a pass. For $2 Brazilian, can we look to the Amish for wholesome society? I mean, to one extent, yeah. I mean, I've always, liked the Amish. I thought it was cool. I've always had a bit of a fantasy of going Amish one day. Not that's something I ever actually plan on doing, but it's always something a cool little idea. But the issue with the Amish is they're allowed to exist by progressives and by the establishment and stuff because they've always existed, or because they've existed for so long. Progressives would not be nearly as forgiving if we wanted to form our based trad commune, because we don't have that fact that we've always existed behind us. They would crack down much harder if we were trying to just form a conservative society that's cut off from the rest of the world. And it would be the Distributors just did a stream talking about this. So I do think the Amish community is really cool. They're good. They do good stuff. But it has limited usefulness for what we can do. And they could be destroyed very easily if the people in power ever wanted to. The Perennialist for $5. Do you think there's a way to combine creating parallel institutions with BoomerCon desires, like taking back the institutions? Would love to talk about it. I mean, there's no reason why you can't try and do a little bit of both. Because yeah, I mean, there's no reason why you can't try to retake certain institutions and try to create other institutions. I mean, the problem is most university systems are so totally dominated by the left that the idea that they could ever really be retaken, at least anytime soon, like within the next 50 or less years, seems very unlikely. Could 500 years from now we have a based Harvard? Yeah, I guess, but we're talking within reasonable time frames. So yeah, I mean that's the main problem with that. With that said, I don't think we should assume all institutions are equal. I'm sure if you really went through the data on this and really looked at different institutions, there are probably some which are being lost to the left or already lost to the left, which are more retainable than others. Like for example, there's many really awful Catholic universities out there, but I imagine the chance of taking back a Catholic university would be much better than taking back Harvard or whatever. I'm sure the same is true for other religious non-Catholic universities too. So I don't want to say it's totally impossible to ever take back an institution, but it's just the sort of boomer con idea that we're going to like take back Harvard is just not possible within any reasonable time frame.
One of the things I don't get is I don't really feel like I actually quite understand what a parallel institution even is, because it seems like 98% of the time it's just going to be a competitor institution. Like if you build a parallel anything, like I don't know, a parallel bank, are you not just in competition with banks? If you build a parallel university, are you not just a competitor university? I mean, what does it actually mean to be a parallel institution? That's different from competitor, because if you're a competitor, then the competition is just going to come take you out, basically, right? I mean, that it's like, is BitChute a parallel institution to YouTube, or is it just a competitor to YouTube? And Twitter sees it as a competitor, obviously, right? And thus bans it, right? So like, I don't really get what parallel institution means exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I think the main point is that it's looking at a different audience than the mainstream institutions are looking at. That like the goal of like a trad Catholic university is not to get the regular people that go to regular universities. It's to get like a conservative faction of people coming to you. But yeah, I mean that is a good point. But moving on. Windowlick for $5 American says donate to Settlers Lament. Thank you very much, Windowlick. Make sure to donate, everyone. Eric for €5 says, as a member of the Dutch upper class, old aristocratic family, it is insane how blue-pilled my class is. How do we win more rogue elites like myself? I mean, I'm not totally sure, to be honest. I mean, I am certainly not a part of any aristocratic families, but I think presenting a compelling vision of the world to people helps attract some people that are really disaffected with the way that society is currently going. But I'm not. But I'm not, beyond, the sort of generalization like that. I'm not really sure much more about the specifics. Is there anything you want to say, Charlemagne?
Just start a cult of personality, mainly. That should be doable for an aristocrat.
Well, no. What he was saying was, how do you like attract a elite to become to defect?
Yeah, well, if you have a really cool cult of personality, other elites will want that too.
Okay.
Just lead by example.
Catalan, I can't pronounce anything. Catalan Batavian, I don't know. For €2. Steve Turley shilling powers. Yes, very based. I agree. Steve Turley's shilling is based. And I hope I can just channel a little bit of that. Another name, Kojar for €5. Great stream, guys. Charlemagne, any chance for a video on Antonio Salazar?
Probably not. I mean, I did a video on like corporatism, basically, which to me more or less covers. I mean, and Salazar is like a corporatist dictator of Portugal, and I don't know. I feel like I made my video on the third position. I kind of think that it's basically just socialism with some apologetics over it. So I don't really think I need to more videos on these various, mid-century corporatist dictators. Other people have made videos on them as well. I'm trying to get something out related to the election right now, but yeah, I feel like there's not really much to say on corporatism, honestly.
Okay.
At least from me.
Okay, yeah, it's not a topic I really know anything detailed about. LJ for 10 USD says the reason Christianity was able to supplant the Roman self-improvement worldview was because there are inherent paradoxes in certain virtues. Hope is only a virtue when everything is hopeless. I mean, I don't really agree with that. I mean, I certainly do not think there's any inherent contradictions in authentic virtues. And I don't really see how hope is a virtue when everything is hopeless. But I don't really know totally what you mean by that. And Roma 42 for 10 Australian says, I'm not sure how the left gets their head around the concept of good and evil. Hell of a conundrum. I mean, the left at least formally denies the existence of good and evil. That's a pretty core part of left-wing worldview, really, to deny that those are real things. They're wrong, of course, and they do realistically they do believe in good and evil. When they talk about the things they hate, they clearly believe that it's evil. But they at least formally deny that exists.
Yeah, they just act like they believe in good and evil. I mean, my experience, if you actually just like talk to a normie tier progressive or liberal, like if you drill down deep enough, they don't actually believe good and evil exists.
Yeah, it's they're very self-contradictory on that matter. But that's all the super chats. So thank you everyone very much for tuning in. And remember to like, comment, subscribe, all that type of stuff. And thanks for joining us.